What's up gamers, DreamcastGuy here, and it's Top 10 Thursday. This week we're looking at games that were over budget, overhyped, or overall just not very good, but they ended up costing their company millions of dollars on our list of Top 10 most expensive gaming flops. Number 10. Duke Nukem Forever. When this game was first announced back in 1997, it sounded like the ultimate 90s shooter. But during the making of it, it just kept getting delayed again and again until it was finally released in 2011. That's right, it took 15 years to complete this game, and upon release, it turned out that maybe it should have just been outright cancelled. Instead of bringing classic Duke Nukem into a modern era, we just ended up with a bland 10-hour game that no one wanted. Sales were terrible, and even a couple days after launch, you could already find this in discount bins. Number 9. Okami. This is by far the most beautiful game on the list. Okami has you playing as a white wolf who can use the power of art to save the world. Sure, it sounds a little bit strange, but this experimental title turned out to be fantastic, and although it won lots of awards, it sold very poorly. The company that designed it tried everything it could to advertise it properly, spending tons on marketing, but in the end, it was considered a huge commercial failure. Luckily, it was loved so much it got 2 different remakes, one on the Nintendo Wii and another one on the PlayStation 3. Despite all the re-releases though, it's still the lowest selling title ever to win Game of the Year. Number 8. All Points Bulletin. Making an open world game is always a costly endeavor, but also trying to make that open world game online, well, that can make costs astronomical. David Jones, one of the creators of the Grand Theft Auto series, wanted to make an MMO that let you roam the city as either a cop or a criminal. Basically, it was trying to be GTA Online years before that ever came out, but there was an extra cool element of letting players be the police as well. On paper, it all seemed perfect, but the gameplay was just broken. Driving around the city to do missions, trying to team up for combat in the streets, or even just exploring, every single element in this game was plagued with glitches. From the day it launched, it seemed like every gamer and reviewer absolutely hated it, making it a total flop. Number 7. Daikatana. Ion Storm set the impossible goal of trying to make a new blockbuster title that could outsell Doom, but along the way they ran into a lot of problems. Everything about this game was over budget. People kept leaving the company, and to replace them they had to fly in specialist programmers from across the country. The studio they were based in was in the top of a huge building in Dallas, made completely out of glass, an overly fancy office that cost over $1 million a month to work in. To top it off, during its 3 years in development, they spent millions buying ad space to try and garner more hype. The worst part of all though is when the game finally did come out, it sucked, leading to terrible sales and the closure of Ion Storm. Number 6. Pac Man on the Atari. Many of us forget that Atari was king of the gaming market in the late 70s and early 80s, but their first major screw-up was trying to port Pac Man onto their home console. During this time, arcades were still everywhere, so really this proved to be the ultimate test. Atari had to prove that home consoles were the future of gaming. I respect them for trying it, but man did they screw this up majorly. The problem was, unfortunately, the Atari 2600 wasn't as powerful as arcade machines, so they were going to have to cut some corners to make this port. Up till now, you've been looking at the gameplay from the arcade version of Pac Man. Brace yourself. This is what Pac Man looked like on the Atari 2600. It's blue, it only has one ghost, and even Pac Man doesn't look right. Fans felt betrayed and even lied to. Some even say that this game is the true culprit that began the great market crash of 1983. Number 5. Lair. When the PS3 was coming out, the most fascinating title being shown was Lair, a game that used the new 6-axis controller to fly a dragon. It had simply stunning graphics for its time, but along with that, the brave design choices made it something that really stood out from other launch titles. It really just had one major problem. The controls did not work, and I mean at all. Flying was based around tilting your controls sort of like a flight stick, but for some reason it just never quite worked exactly how they intended it. Since it was essentially broken at launch, word of mouth spread quick and people knew, don't touch this game. The developers ended up panicking. They saw how bad it was selling and they decided to get the team together to create a huge patch to make it where you could play the game in a normal way. Unfortunately, by that time, it was too late. Number 4. Tomb Raider, the Angel of Darkness. Recently, Tomb Raider has become a great franchise again, and back in the mid-90s, she was one of the best action platformer games around, but many forget about what caused her series to die originally. Angel of Darkness is full of glitches, is insanely hard, and worst of all, just plain boring. The guys at Eidos were aiming to make a darker version of Lara, one that would fit in with a new generation of anti-heroes. To do this, though, they ended up abandoning a lot of the history and the gameplay that made her so famous in the first place. Instead of getting to frolic through interesting tombs, you're just climbing around on rooftops. Instead of solving puzzles, you're trying to level up your skills like grip strength. Instead of looking for cool treasure, you're just trying to stop a weird mystery involving fallen angels. When this game came out, it was so critically disliked that they ended up firing every single employee who worked on it. Number 3. Shenmue. Obviously, my favorite console is the Dreamcast, and one of the most famous games for that doomed console is Shenmue. Personally, I think this game is amazing, but it's hard to deny that it cost them way too much to make. Being one of the first open world titles ever, they had a hard task ahead of them. When design first began, it was planned as a Sega Saturn RPG based on Virtua Fighter. Over time, it slowly evolved into its own game, focusing on the epic story of a man named Ryu seeking vengeance for the death of his father. The world itself was extremely interactive, letting you talk to every character, mess with hundreds of items. If you wanted to, you could even go down to the arcade and play sweet arcade games. Does this all sound costly? Well, it should, because it's rumored that they spent a total of $47 million making this game. They were really betting that this would be a massive breakout success. They wanted this to be the flagship that revolutionized the Dreamcast for everybody, but instead, it just didn't pan out. It had lackluster sales and ended up costing Sega a lot. Number 2. Too Human. After 9 years of secret work, battling against other companies, and even a giant lawsuit, Too Human managed to be launched amid a wave of controversy. Much of what was shown in screenshots and videos turned out not to be in the completed game. This might be forgivable if Too Human had actually been fun, but instead it was actually just rather bland. The real interesting story and what made this so costly is what happened once it was out. Silicon Knights, the team who made this, were sued by their owners over at Epic Games. It turns out that while they were making this turd, they were giving away company secrets, they were breaking contracts, and they were even using copyrighted material illegally. Because of all this, the government stepped in and made them destroy every single copy of Too Human. They even had to delete it off digital stores. You could say this game failed so badly it was erased from history. Number 1. Sonic Boom. A few games on this list are pretty awesome, but let's be clear, Sonic Boom isn't one of them. This game is truly awful. Sega's had some trouble over the years listening to their fans, and instead have just been blindly churning out worse and worse content. Sonic Boom plays horribly, taking away the speed that the series is known for and instead giving gamers a slow, broken pile of levels. To try and boost their sales, they actually released two different versions of Sonic Boom. You could buy it on the 3DS and it was called the Shattered Crystal, or you could buy it on the Wii U and it was called the Rise of Lyric. But no matter which one you chose, you were getting an awful title. Commercially, this game was a massive flop. Even if you managed to get all of the sales of both the 3DS and Wii U version, they add up together for less than 500,000 copies sold. It did so badly that shortly after its launch, Sega had to downsize. They let hundreds of employees go. It almost seems like this game is the nail in the coffin of Sega. And for that reason, it wins the award as the worst video game flop in history. Did your favorite flop not make the list? Got an idea for a future top 10? Leave it in the comments down below. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe if it's your first time watching. But do me the biggest favor of all and keep dreaming. You guys rock. Seriously, these videos are so fun to make. This has been crazy. We're about to break 15,000 subscribers. I just wanted to say a special thank you. Thank you. Thanks so much for watching. If you like this video, maybe check out my last video. Please subscribe, and if you want, share this somewhere with your friends.